Hello everyone, I am Dr. Nidhi Gupta and in this particular session we will be discussing a very important topic of Indian economy, that is balance of payment. So let's begin this. So before discussing the balance of payment, I would like to tell you about balance of trade. That is also very important. So when we talk about this balance of trade, we must understand that it refers to the difference between the total value of only goods imported and exported over a given period of time, usually 1 year, and it refers to merchandise account of exports and imports only. It includes only visible items. Now, what are visible items? So, visible items are those which are officially recorded at the custom check post. Now, I have mentioned here three concepts of balance of trade: favorable balance of trade, unfavorable balance of trade, and balanced balance of trade. So let's discuss first favorable balance of trade. If the value of visible export is greater than the value of visible import, then the balance of trade is said to be favorable. Next, if the value of visible import exceeds the value of visible exports, that means import is more than export, then the balance of trade is said to be unfavorable. Now the last one is balanced balance of trade. So as the name suggests, if the value of visible export is exactly equal to the value of visible imports, the balance of trade is said to be balanced. So these three are the types of balance of trade. Now let's move further to the balance of payment. So, today there is hardly any economy which is self-sufficient and produces everything that it needs. Every country imports from other countries the goods that cannot be produced in that particular country or can be produced only at higher cost than the foreign suppliers. Likewise, a company exports to other countries the goods and services which it can supply with comparative advantage. International specialization achieved through this manner is beneficial to all countries in a world of free trade. And even investment in foreign countries earn interest, a sort of reward for the services rendered by the capital. So, all such transactions at the international level act as an engine of growth and promote efficiency in the economy. Establishment of the World Trade Organization has been given, further boost to this economic growth. So when we talk about this balance of payment of a country presents basically the monetary picture of international trade of a country. It is a systematic record of all economic transactions between the residents of reporting country with the residents of the rest of the world during a certain period of time, usually 1 year. So here I have mentioned that balance of payment account shows all receipts and payments on account of goods exported, services rendered, capital received by the residents of a country, goods imported, services received, and capital transferred by the residents of the country. So these accounts serve as a useful purpose as is evident from the following facts which are given below. The balance of payment provides necessary information required for the formulation of national planning and foreign trade policy. The government can make structural changes in the economic policy after assessing the balance of payment positions. Next is the balance of payment explain the state of a country in a international trade. By comparing the accounts for several years, it is possible to find whether the international economic condition of a country is improving or deteriorating. The balance of payment reflect the composition and magnitude of foreign trade, revealing the weak and strong points in the foreign trade of the country. So, this is very important. And the amount of income earned by the foreigners on their investment and the country on its investment abroad can be known from the balance of payment. So we can say it is, a financial statement of a country or a sort of mirror which is reflecting the flow of goods, services, and funds between the residents of one country with that of other countries of, would during a year's time. And it is based on double entry bookkeeping system. And here we can also say that on the basis of balance of payment position, international financial institutions determine the amount of financial assistance to be given to the country. So here in this, if you see the point mentioned here, I have explained about the balance of payment, explain the state of a country in the international trade. So here I would like to mention also that these accounts also show further repercussions on the basis of country's past trade performances. And if the balance of payment accounts show a continual large deficit over time and foreign independence, the country may ultimately become bankrupt financially. Likewise, continual large surplus in the balance of payment account beyond the absorption capacity of the country may spur inflation in the economy, and accordingly, necessary corrective measures need to be adopted in time. So, moving forward, here now we would like to discuss the components of balance of payment. So balance of payment usually composed of three parts. Number one is current account, second is capital account, and third is official reserve account. So let's discuss first the current account. Basically, the current account records transactions arising from trade in goods as well as services and income accruing to the residents of one country from another and from transfer by residents of one country to the residents of another. This account records the earnings and expenditure of foreign exchange by a country during a year. Current account reflects sources and uses of national income. So basically, the current account is important in the sense that it reflects sources and uses of national income. And if we talk about it is divided into three sections also. First section is goods and services account. So the first part of this particular goods and services account is component relating to goods trade is called the visible account, or we also say this, we also can call it trade account. So it records receipts and payments arising from exports and imports of tangible goods respectively. Now the second part is services. The transaction which do not involve a physical commodity, changing hands, transport charges, shipping or broker's fee. It is called the services part of goods and service account. Now the second type of current account is known as income account. So it includes employee compensation and investment income, which is basically the interest and dividend income. And the third is current transfer. This may be by the central government and other unilateral transfers like gifts, grants, donations, aids, and remittances. So basically, when we talk about the unilateral transfers, they do not involve quid pro quo or the transfer of equivalent value. Hence, there is only give or take. So the receiving country is debited to keep the record of non-refundable amounts, and donor is credited for record purpose. And all the components of this current account other than trade in goods are known as the invisible accounts. It is important to know, when we group visible and invisible transactions, we get balance of payment on current account. So when we, I would like to explain it again to you all. So if the sum value of the foreign exchange receipts on account of trade in visibles and invisibles is greater than the sum of the value of foreign exchange payments on visibles and invisibles, we have a favorable or credit balance, which is we can call surplus in the balance of payment on current account and vice versa. So balance of payments of current account may be, in balance if the total value of visible and invisible receipts is equal to the value of visible and invisible payments by us. In the recent years, even we can see that India has been suffering from huge deficits in our balance of payment on current account, despite having a surplus on invisible account. Here I have shown you, if the receipts are more than payments, we have the favorable balance of payment on current account. If our receipts are less than the payment, then we have the unfavorable balance of payment on current account. So when we talk about India, we know that a current account deficit means that a country is saving less than what it invests, and this is the case of India too. So generally, a current account deficit is considered bad, but it can be viewed as a positive development when the country is recovering from a recession, more rapidly, that its trading partner raising more imports than exports from higher incomes. And further, the home country may become an attractive source of foreign investment on account of expected high returns due to favorable business conditions, technological change, and consequent rise in productivity. And if we talk about investment inflows, we can say that investment inflows put downward pressure on interest rates, stimulating investment, growth, and employment. And these capital inflows assist particularly developing countries in their early efforts of industrialization. So, if the balance of payment on current account shows a deficit, there is a net outflow of income from the country. It involves a payment problem. And the deficit can be financed by the country by using a part of its gold stock to make payments to the foreigners. And alternatively, the country may draw upon its past accumulated reserves of foreign currencies and foreign securities. Then the country can also borrow foreign exchange from various private and official sources too. And finally, the country can mobilize foreign exchange by attracting loans, deposits, and investment of capitals by foreigners. So likewise, if a country has a current account surplus, it can purchase financial assets abroad. It may have direct investment in other countries, or it may extend loan or repay previous loans to the rest of the world, resulting in a net outflow of capital. So in a way, imbalance in the current account can be settled through a capital account, or to which we now discuss. So as I have told you, the second component is capital account. So what is this capital account? So it consists of its transaction in financial assets in the form of short-term lending and borrowing and private and official investments. And it refers to the inflow and outflow of capital on account of capital transactions, like bank loans and investments, inflow and outflow of foreign capital, repayment of past debts, interest payment on foreign debts, etc. And the gold transactions taking place between the countries are also included in capital account. The following items which I have mentioned in my slide, they constitute the capital account. The first is long-term capital movement, second is loans, and third is short-term capital movement. So let's discuss first the long-term capital movement. When we talk about this long-term capital movement, it results from private direct foreign investment or foreigners buying long-term securities, which I mean maturity period is greater than 1 year from the residents of that country. And FDI is the act of changes in non-resident ownership of domestic firms and resident ownership of foreign firms. A transfer of funds to our country constitutes credit entry in the capital account of our balance of payment, and on the contrary, an Indian transferring funds to a foreign country to acquire a capital asset abroad will constitute a debit entry in the capital account of our balance of payment. FDI, when we talk about FDI, it means establishment or acquiring the control of a production unit in our country by a foreigner through investment in shares, bonds, real estate, physical assets such as plant, building, equipment, etc. And here we can also talk about portfolio investment in this. So basically, what is this portfolio investment? It involves purchasing long term securities like stocks and bonds of the government or firms from the residents. So here the funds are transferred between the countries for the acquisition of an asset, but the purchase does not get the legal control. It is important. And a purchase of stock of a company by a foreign institutional investor resulting in inflow of foreign exchange constitutes a credit entry in the capital account of balance of payments. Similarly, we can say that a selling of holding of a company by a foreign institutional investor will give rise to a debit entry in the capital account of balance of payment. And long term capital movements also include amortization of capital. What do we mean by this? The repurchase and resale of securities earlier sold to or purchased from the foreigners. Now let's discuss about loans. The second item. So loans received by a government of a country from other country or international financial institution augmenting the supply of foreign exchange will be treated as a credit entry in the capital account of balance of payment, and receipts on account of repayment of loans will be treated alike. And similarly, payments of loans to foreign governments or business concerns operating to foreign countries resulting in outflow of foreign exchange will be entered as debit item in the capital account of balance of payment. Now, short-term capital movement like the private loans or movement in banking capital. So, a short-term capital inflow into a country, results from foreigners purchasing short-term government or corporate securities. That means where the maturity period of less than 1 year, from the foreigners raising their holdings of commercial claims or from foreigners raising balance in the bank of the country in question. So these include transfer from overseas banks and sales or purchase of short-term financial instruments such as for example the treasury bills or commercial bills or acceptances bills, etc. So these are the items which are constituting the capital account. Now the third is official reserve account. It is also a part of capital account. It measures the changes in a nation's liquid and non-liquid liabilities to foreign official holders and the change in a nation's official reserve assets during the year. And it includes its gold stock, changes in the official foreign exchange holding, SDR holdings of the government, and similar other capital transactions, etc. They are some of the items of credit, and payment are the debit items. So these are maintained to stabilize the exchange rate of the home currency and to make payments to creditors if deficit on all accounts. So this is the official reserve account. Now, when we talk about the balance in two accounts, it is very important. If I would like to mention here the words of Gerald M. Mayer. He said that transactions in the current account affect national income, and in terms of income analysis, the level of output and employment. So, transactions in the capital account affect the international debtors or creditors position of the country and the distribution of wealth and debt, which I have mentioned here. And if we talk about the transactions in current account, it affects national income, and in terms of income analysis, the level of output and employment. Transactions in international reserve account determine the stock of foreign reserves available to the country for settling any deficit in the current or capital account. So, this offset deficit in balance of payment. Consequently, the current and capital account balances are equal and of opposite sign. When added together, they equal to 0. So, while conceptually the current and capital accounts are defined to be equal in size and opposite in sign, in practice it is very difficult to record all the entries in the balance of payment accurately, and the sum is not 0. So that is why a balancing item called net errors and omissions, it is included to balance the balance of payment. So this item takes into account the inaccuracies in recording different transactions due to smuggling, underreporting or over-reporting of transactions, and use of sampling. So the balancing item includes all unrecorded transaction and is equal to the difference between the measured current account and the measured capital as well as financial account. Therefore, in practice, it is the sum of current, capital and net errors and omissions. It is always equal to 0. It is important to note. Now let's discuss the causes of disequilibrium in balance of payment. So when we talk about the disequilibrium, balance of payments disequilibrium occurs when there is an excess of debits over credits in the current account that is not balanced by an autonomous capital inflow. And it requires some accumulating transactions such as the loss of foreign exchange reserves, official borrowings or depreciation or devaluation of the domestic currency. So this disequilibrium may be caused by some factors. So first factor, let's discuss the first factor is economic factor. So, some economic factors lead to balance of payment disequilibrium. First is growing development needs of the economy requiring increased expenditure on imports of raw material, machinery, capital, equipment and technology. Second is price changes affecting the demand and value of export and import. Third is cyclical fluctuations in the business activity affecting the volume of export and import, again depending upon the prevalence of depression or the boom in the economy. The next is changes in the consumer taste. Yes, again it is important. Changes in the consumer's taste and preference and fashions within the country or abroad for our import and export respectively. Then next is technological changes in the methods of production affecting the cost and quality of the products. Then restriction on imports, and then more imports on account of demonstration effect, particularly in the developing countries with huge population like India. The second factor is political factor. We have already discussed the economic factor. Now the second is political factor. So in this, political instability, expenditure on expansion of embassies abroad, partition of country, unification of country, international relations, they also account for disequilibrium in balance of payment. And when we talk about the partition in country, like disintegration of USSR and division of Yugoslovakia or India, and I have mentioned here unification of country, like that of West Germany and East Germany, and here I have mentioned also the international relations, maybe cordial or hostile. So these all also account for disequilibrium in the BOPs. Now moving forward to the measures to correct disequilibrium in balance of payment. Adverse balance of payment slow down the pace of economic development, and it also lowers the international economic credibility of the country, and it also leads to economic and political dependence of the country on foreign countries, resulting in foreign interference in the country's economic, social and political fields. Reserves of gold, other precious metals, and foreign currencies, they go down as the same flow out of the country. So ultimately the distortions in the economy push the country into indebtedness, and the government must take steps to correct chronic adverse balance of payments, lest the country loses all its foreign exchange and is unable to raise more loans outside. So, when we talk about the Indian economy, India faced a similar situation in July 1990, when its foreign exchange reserves had fallen dangerously low, and it was just sufficient to meet import bill of 15 days only, against the normal requirement for at least 90 days. So this disequilibrium in balance of payments can also occur in the form of surplus also. uh, However, surplus rarely poses any problem, and therefore most of the discussions here is concerned with measures to tackle the problem of deficit only, deficit in balance of payment. So balance of payment adjustment methods here we will be discussing. So first method is monetary method or measures. So when we talk about this monetary method, they aim at correcting the disequilibrium in the balance of payment by regulating and controlling total monetary resources available in the country. They deal with manipulating various monetary instruments which affects the total export and import of the country, like deflation. Second is depreciation or devaluation of domestic currency, like we have also discussed the demonetization. And the third is exchange control. The second is trade measures. Here I have mentioned, they aim at uh, regulating and restricting import and stimulating the exports of the country. So when we talk about trade measures, every economy wants more and more export activities and less import activities. So it is divided into two parts. The first is reduction in imports. Here we can reduce the import by imposing import duties, or we may have some import restrictions on some commodities, or the government may also go for deciding the import quotas, in which a particular quantity is only allowed to import, and then import prohibitions for some of the commodities, and then the import substitution. So these are the few activities through which government can reduce the import in the economy. So when we talk about the import prohibition and import substitution, let's discuss the restrictive import policy also here. After adopting the growth model of Mahalanobis from second five-year plan, the government of India had to go for the large-scale imports of heavy machines, intermediate goods, and technology. And to tackle this problem of the food shortage, the government of India had to import food grains also on large scale from the world. So, to check the surging deficit in the balance of trade, we had to introduce some restrictions on imports of non essential goods to save foreign exchange. And after 1980, liberal policy was adopted. Imports of raw material and semi manufactured were allowed on priority basis. So, it was the restrictive import policy which can be adopted by the economy to reduce the imports. Then the second one is import substitution policy. There were twin objectives of this policy. First, to save precious foreign exchange, to utilize the same for the import of more items that would facilitate the industrialization and economic development. Second objective was to attain self-sufficiency in the production of some crucial items like food grains. So, in the first stage, it was applied to import of consumer goods only. And in the second stage, efforts were made to produce tools, implements, and machines within the country. Third stage was focused to Indian technology, and as a result of the policy, many commodities like vehicles, railway coaches, machine tools, diesel engines, they were affected. Now, the second part of this trade measures is export promotion. As I have already told you that most of the government wants more and more export activities. So, when we talk about this, reduction or abolition of export duties may be very helpful in this, because if we are reducing the export duties, many more exporters can export the more quantity of their commodity to other countries than granting bounty and subsidies. So, or we may also give some tax concession for export oriented industries, and then entering into any bilateral or multilateral trade agreement with the other nations. So basically what is happening, the quantitative or commercial controls in the form of import quota and export quota can also be used in this. And the government fixes up the maximum quantity of a commodity to be import in the import reduction of import, and here in export promotion again they can fix the maximum quantity to be exported during a given period. And the government can also prescribe different quantities to be exported from to different countries. And unlike fiscal controls, quantitative controls, they do not bring any revenue to the government. So there is a need to check discrimination and corruption in fixing the quotas in import activities, and in deciding the tax concession or any reduction in the export duties as well. So the government can also promote export through here, as I have mentioned, through reduction of export duties, and again they can grant some subsidies or bounties in the export activities as well. Now the third is other measures. Here we can include the borrowing from other capital rich nations and international financial institutions. So with the help of this borrowing, we can reduce the deficit in balance of payment. Then the next is encouragement to foreign investment, be it the private foreign investment or the public foreign investment. So if more and more foreign investment would be there in your economy, automatically the deficit will be reduced. And then the next is attracting non-resident Indians deposits. So if the NRIs will deposit their income in your country, it will be in foreign currency, and automatically it will also be reducing the deficit. And then the last is incentive to foreign tourists. So more tourists will be attractive if will be giving, some incentives to them, and they will be coming to your country frequently, and then you will be able to generate the forex from them. So these are the measures which we can take to correct the disequilibrium in balance of payment. And this topic is complete now. I expect that you all have understood the topic, that is balance of payment, the measures and the components of balance of payment. So thank you so much. And if you like the topic, please like and subscribe my channel as well.